The land was cracked like an old man's knuckles, dry and bitter with the smell of sun-baked mesquite. I'd patched fences most the morning, the kind of work that don't ask much from a man but his back and what's left of his knees. Truth I didn't mind the silence anymore. No one to argue with, no voices bouncing off the walls back home, just me, the wind, and Dusty trailing along, nose down, tail half curled from a coyote scar that never did heal right. I was just about to call it for the day when I caught the scent of smoke sharp and wrong. Not the kind from a cook fire or even lightning-scorched brush. This was tar and timber and fabric burning hot, the kind of thing that meant ruin. Dusty caught it too. His ears lifted, and he gave a low whine, sniffing hard toward the ridge. Guy. Rode slow at first. You live out here long enough, you learn not to go charging into a problem like it owes you money. But the closer we got, the harder that smell punched. By the time I crested the rise, my horse, Nell, was restless, stepping high like she didn't care for what she saw. Down in the gulch, just off the old riverbed trail, stood what used to be a white-covered wagon, now half-eaten by fire. One wheel splintered into nothing, axle twisted like taffy. Smoke curled up like the ghost of something better left dead. That was bad enough, but then I saw them. 3 figures, small, still tied to a fence rail 50 feet off the trail. Their dresses were white, scorched around the hems, faces too smudged with soot to make sense of. One was slumped sideways. Another sat rigid as stone. The smallest looked like she could blow away if the wind kicked up. I dismounted slow, kept my voice low. Hey there. I ain't here to hurt you. They didn't move. Dusty stayed close, ears back, tail low. I stepped soft toward the rail. The oldest one raised her chin just a little. Her face was scraped, one eye puffed up like a swollen peach. She didn't flinch when I reached for the rope. Just stared through me like I was already dead. The knots were cruel tight and done by someone in a hurry but who meant for it to hold. Took me a minute to cut through, my blade dull from fence wire and habits I hadn't shaken. When the oldest girl came loose, she didn't bolt. Just shifted enough to catch the other 2 as I cut them free. The middle one, maybe 12, had peed herself. The smell hit me same time as the tremble in her arms. The littlest girl couldn't have been more than 7. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared at the burned wagon like it was still burning. I pulled off my canteen. Drink if you can. None of them moved. I took a sip to show it was safe. The oldest finally stepped forward, took it. Without a word, passed it down. They drank careful. Too careful for girls that aged. No signs of other people, no fresh tracks. Just that twisted wreck of a bridal wagon and 3 girls left to die under a sun that didn't know how to quit. I looked toward the horizon. Nearest town was 7 Forks, a day's ride if you didn't stop. My place was closer. You come with me, I said quiet. I got food, clean water, a roof. Still, they didn't speak. Just followed when I started toward Nell. I brought a pack mule, thank God, slung 2 girls on it, youngest in front. The oldest walked, said nothing. I didn't press. We rode slow through red dirt canyons and scrub-fin flats. Every so often I'd glance back to make sure they were still with me. They were. Dusty kept close to the youngest, as if she needed guarding. Maybe she did. By the time the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange and violet, the ranch house came into view, just a squat 2-room place with a busted porch and a windmill that only worked when it felt like it. The girls looked at it. Like it was a church? No one cried. Not yet. They'll come later. I made a pot of beans. Found half a loaf of bread. I didn't remember going stale. Set the table without talking. They sat without being told. Ate slow, like they thought they'd have to give it back. Afterward, I showed them the back room where Mary used to sew, where I hadn't set foot in over a year. Dust was thick. The rocking chair hadn't moved since the day she'd gone. But the bed was still there. I laid out blankets. Left the lamp burning low. Before I shut the door, the oldest girl looked at me. Just looked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then she turned away. I stood outside a long while after that. Hands on my hips, the sky full of stars I hadn't looked at proper in months. Asterisk 3 girls. A burned-out wagon. No names, no words, asterisk, but they were alive. And someone had meant them not to be. Asterisk Dusty came to my side, leaned into my leg. The way he always did when something felt off in the air. Asterisk. Yeah, I said, scratching behind his ear. Me too. Asterisk tomorrow. I'd ask who they were. Maybe they'd answer. Tonight it was enough to know they were safe. For now. Asterisk the morning broke quiet, pale light dripping through the windows like it was afraid to touch anything. I brewed coffee on the stove, careful not to bang the kettle. The girls were still asleep, or at least still lying down. Dusty stretched out in front of the door like a sentry who didn't trust the peace. Asterisk I didn't know their names. Didn't know if they even had them anymore. What I did know was the house felt different with them in it. Not loud, not cheerful, just fuller. Like the air had weighed again. Asterisk I left a plate of cornmeal mush on the table and stepped outside to water the mule and check the trough. The windmill was sluggish, but there was enough to fill a bucket. I caught my reflection in the pale grayer than last year, deeper lines around the mouth. I looked like a man who'd lived with more ghosts than people. Asterisk when I came back inside. The youngest was sitting at the table, bare feet tucked under her, hair tangled like dry straw. She stared at the mush, not eating. Asterisk I sat down slow across from her. Hungry? Asterisk she blinked, almost like she hadn't heard the word in a long while. Then she nodded, one small, slow dip of the chin. I slid the spoon toward her, and she picked it up like it weighed something. Asterisk the other two came out long after. The middle. Girl, light brown hair, quiet eyes hovered behind the oldest. That one, the tall one with the bruised face and the iron jaw, moved like someone twice her age, like she'd already made peace with the worst of it and dared you to make her talk. About it, they sat, ate, not a word between them. I'm Harlan Boone, I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. This here's Dusty. He's useless with chickens, but good company otherwise. Asterisk none of them smiled. Not even the little one? Asterisk. You got names? Silence. I didn't press. Asterisk the oldest finally met my eyes, just for a moment. Then looked away. Asterisk I ain't gonna make you talk, I said gently. But I reckon you should know you're safe here. Ain't nobody gonna hurt you on this land. Not while I'm drawing breath. Asterisk still nothing. But the youngest kept glancing at Dusty. Her hand hovered just above his back, trembling like she wasn't sure if it was allowed. Dusty licked her fingers, and that was all it took. She wrapped her arms around his neck like he was the last soft thing in the world. Asterisk by midday, I had them outside. Didn't say much, just brought them along while I split kindling and fixed. The latch on the barn door, the wind was up. Dust clung to everything. Asterisk the girls watched me work like it was a test. I didn't know what they were looking for, violence maybe, or impatience, but I gave them neither. Asterisk the middle one helped without being asked, carried kindling in her arms, stacked it neat. She kept her head down, but she watched my hands. Every time I reached for something sharp, her body went stiff, like she expected someone to swing. Asterisk by sundown, I had stew on the fire and biscuits in the pan. The girls were in the corner, sitting close like deer in brush. Asterisk tomorrow, I said. Between bites, we'll ride into Seven Forks. I'll get more supplies. You can come if you want. Asterisk the oldest girl tensed. The youngest clutched Dusty tighter. I took another bite, slow and easy. Or you can stay. Your call. Asterisk I let the silence sit. Some things needed breathing room. Asterisk that night, the screaming started just after midnight. Asterisk I was on my feet before I was fully awake. The sound twisted in the dark, high, sharp, and panicked. I ran to the back room, pushed the door open. Asterisk Evia, her name came out of Martha's mouth like it was being ripped. Out Evia was thrashing under the quilt, eyes wide, kicking like she was still tied. Jolin sat frozen, too scared to move. Martha had her arms around the girl, whispering something over and over. Asterisk, it's not fire, baby. It's not fire. You're not burning. Asterisk I stepped back before they saw me, gave them their moment. But The word sat heavy in my chest. Asterisk come morning. I made bacon and eggs, real food, and laid it out on the table like I was feeding a family. They came out one by one, no smiles, no words. But Jolyn nodded when I offered her the plate, and Ivia whispered something to Dusty I couldn't quite hear. Asterisk Martha sat last. She stared at me while she ate, guarded but deliberate. Asterisk, they were. Gonna sell us, she said finally, voice like gravel. 2 old men out west, brides, asterisk I didn't move. Just let her speak. Asterisk, we didn't want to go, didn't want to be touched. So they tied us up and burned the wagon. Said we were. Ruined anyhow, asterisk she didn't cry. Didn't blink. Just chewed her last bite of egg and looked me in the eye. Asterisk, are you gonna tell the law? Asterisk, I'll tell whoever you want, I said quiet, or I won't tell no one. She stared a moment longer, then turned to her sisters. No one. She said, that was the deal, and I meant to keep it. Asterisk. The trail into Seven Forks felt longer than usual, like the road had stretched itself thin just to test me. The girls stayed behind at the ranch by their own choosing. Martha didn't say why, but I could tell she didn't want any eyes on them. Couldn't blame her. Whatever scars were hiding under their quiet, they weren't ready for strangers just yet. Asterisk, the town hadn't changed. Same creaky storefronts, same faded banners over the general store porch. A few faces lifted as I rode in, but none lingered. Long, that was the blessing of being a man nobody expected much from. Harlan Boone, widower, rancher, half-ghost most days. Folks let me be, and I let them do the same. Asterisk inside the store, I loaded flour, beans, salt pork, matches, and thread onto the counter. Miss Della gave me a long look as she tallied it up. Asterisk, feeding more than just yourself these days? She asked, voice polite, eyes sharp. Asterisk, I gave a half shrug. Strays showed up, not the 4-legged kind. Asterisk, she arched a brow, but didn't press. Folks out here knew better than to dig for answers they weren't sure they wanted. Asterisk, anything else? She asked, sliding the goods into burlap. Asterisk, I paused, then nodded toward the shelves behind her. You still carry girls' dresses? Small ones? Asterisk, her hands stilled, a beat passed. Then she turned and pulled 3 from the rack plain cotton. One a little yellowed from sitting too long. Asterisk, no charge, she said, laying them beside the food. But I'd feel better if you came back in a few days and told me they fit. I gave a nod, throat tight. On the way back, I kept checking the horizon like trouble might ride up behind me. It didn't, but the silence in my head was louder now. Martha's words had taken root, the kind that don't quit growing. Asterisk, they were gonna sell us. Asterisk, by the time I got back to the ranch, the sun had dipped just enough to catch the fields in gold. Dusty barked once, then trotted out to meet me. Behind him, Jolyn appeared on the porch, barefoot, a broom in one hand and suspicion in her eyes. It's just me, I said, lifting the sack. She relaxed. A little. Martha came out next, arms folded tight across her chest. Evia peeked from behind her skirt. Asterisk, I brought you dresses, I said, setting the bundle down gently. Hope they're close. Asterisk, Martha didn't answer, but Jolyn's hand moved toward the cloth like maybe it didn't feel real. Asterisk, that night, after supper, I sat out under the stars, Dusty at my feet, fire crackling low. The door creaked open behind me. Martha stepped out, arms wrapped in one of the new dresses. She sat on the porch edge, watching the moon rise. Asterisk, you fought in the war? She asked after a while. Asterisk, wasn't much of a fighter, I said. Carried stretchers, dug graves. She nodded like that made sense. You got family still? Asterisk, had a wife, I said. Mary, she passed a year ago this spring, no children. Asterisk, Martha stared out over the land. I don't think our parents are coming for us. Asterisk, I didn't say anything. There were truths too bitter to dress up with soft words. Asterisk, she turned to me. Do you believe in second chances? Asterisk, I looked at her, at the bruises fading from her face, the guarded light in her eyes. I believe some folks earn them, I said. And others just need someone willing to offer one. Asterisk, she nodded. Then stood and went inside. Asterisk the next morning. I was fixing the hinge on the chicken coop when hoofbeats sounded on the ridge. Dusty growled low, tail stiff. I stood up slow and reached for the rifle leaning by the barn door. Asterisk a rider came in too. View tall in the saddle, long coat flapping, hat pulled low. Behind him, two more men rode in staggered formation. I didn't recognize their faces, but something in their posture set my teeth on edge. Asterisk they stopped just shy of the fence line. The lead rider lifted a hand. Asterisk, "Mornin'," he called. "You." "Harlan Boone?" Asterisk, "Who's a skin?" Asterisk, "Name's Jesson." "These here's Cole and Canner? We're looking for 3 girls went missing from a bridal train out of San Miguel, said to be taken by some outlaw or drunk settler." Asterisk I didn't move. Just kept the rifle loose in my grip. "Can't help you," I said. Jesson clicked his tongue. "See, we got word a man matching your description came into town yesterday. Bought supplies from more than one mouth. Bought dresses too." Asterisk I felt my jaw tighten. "They ain't here," I said flatly. Jesson smiled without humor. "You sure about that?" Asterisk behind me, the door creaked. I didn't have to look to know Martha was standing there. Jesson's eyes shifted just enough. "I'd take kindly to you turning around now," I said, lifting the rifle. "This is private land. You don't got a badge, and you ain't got cause." Asterisk Jesson's smile faded. "We'll be back," he said. "And next time we won't be alone." Asterisk they rode off, dust kicking up behind them like a storm waiting to break. When I turned, Martha was standing still as a fence post, face pale. "They're the ones," she whispered. "That's who tied us up." Asterisk I nodded slowly. "Then we've got a problem." Her hands clenched at her sides, but her voice came clear. "Then we fight back." Asterisk the storm came 2 nights later, not from the sky, but from the ridge. I knew. The second I heard the quiet knock on the back door that the moment had come. Martha opened it before I could stand. Jolin stood behind her, clutching a kitchen knife like it was the only thing left she could trust. Evia was pressed into the shadows, holding Dusty's collar so tight her knuckles were bone white. Asterisk, "They're here," Martha said, voice calm but hollowed out. Asterisk I stepped outside, rifle slung over my shoulder, lantern swinging low from my hand. The night air was thick, the moon a dull smear behind cloud cover. 3 figures waited beyond the fence, Jesson and his men. Just like before, only now they weren't smiling. Asterisk, "You had time to think," Jesson called out. "We're done asking." Asterisk, "I told you boys," I said, stepping to the edge of the porch. "Ain't nobody here belongs to you." Asterisk Jesson's hand dropped to his holster. "We're taking them back, Boone. They were promised." "Men paid good coin?" Asterisk, "She's not chattel," I snapped, voice rising before I could pull it back. "None of them are." Asterisk Tanner, the youngest of the 3, shifted in the saddle. "We got papers," he said, like that settled it. Asterisk, "You got ashes?" Martha said from behind me. "That's what's left of your papers. We burned them same as the wagon." Asterisk Jesson's eyes narrowed. "Girl, you speak out of turn again and you'll..." Asterisk I raised the rifle, not pointed, but ready. Asterisk, "You finish that sentence," I said, "and I'll bury you where you stand." Asterisk the 3 of them stared at me. Not a man among them moved. Then Jesson leaned forward slightly in the saddle. Asterisk, "Last chance." Asterisk I didn't answer. Dusty let out a low, rattling growl. Asterisk, "They didn't leave. They dismount. Asterisk, it happened fast after that." The night erupted in shouting and broken wood. Cole tried the front porch, boot crashing through the railing. I fired once, missed on purpose, but it sent him scrambling back. Jesson ducked behind the barn and disappeared into the dark. Then I heard Martha yell. I spun toward the back of the house just as Jesson burst through the kitchen door, dragging Evia by the arm. Jolin screamed and flung the knife, missed by a mile, but it startled him enough that he loosened his grip. Asterisk I crossed the room in 3 strides and slammed Jesson into the wall so hard it shook the shelf above. He punched wild, clipped my cheek. I kneed him in the gut, brought the butt of the rifle up and cracked it across his jaw. He fell like wet laundry. Martha was already pulling Evia back, shielding her. Outside, the hoofbeats faded. Cole and Tanner had bolted. Asterisk, Jessen groaned. On the floor, I stood over him, chest heaving, hands shaking. Asterisk, you gonna kill me? He rasped, blood in his teeth. Asterisk. No, I said. But I'll tie you to the same fence you left them girls on. Let the night have its say. Asterisk, we rode him out before sunrise. Bound and bleeding, dropped him at the edge of town with a note pinned to his coat. Asterisk, tried to steal what don't belong to him. Justice spared, warned once. Asterisk, by noon, half of Seven Forks had heard. No sheriff came. No one rode out after us. Asterisk, for a few days. The house was quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. Lighter, the girls didn't jump at every creak. Jolene started humming sometimes when she swept the porch. Ivia laughed, just once when Dusty rolled off the bed and got stuck under the dresser. Asterisk, Martha spoke more. Sat with me in the evenings while I fixed tack or carved on fence posts. We didn't talk much, but the silence between us wasn't hollow anymore. Asterisk, one night, I found her standing by the edge of the corral, staring up at the stars. Asterisk, I used to think surviving was enough, she said. But now I want more. Asterisk, what kind of more? She didn't answer right away. I want to stop waiting for the next fire. I want to build something that can't be burned down. Asterisk, I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it. The steel, the weariness, but also the fierce, quiet hope. Asterisk, then build it here, I said. If you want, asterisk, she turned to me. This your way of asking us to stay? Asterisk, it's my way of telling you I already want you to. Asterisk, for the first time, she smiled. Asterisk, not wide, not bright, but it was real. And it felt like dawn. Asterisk,